The November rain was relentless, like grief that wouldn't let go. Marcus Evans stood on the porch of what used to be his home, fists pounding against a door that no longer opened for him. Two security guards, thick-necked, stone-faced, held his arms like he was a criminal trespasser, not the man who had built this life with trembling hands and love. The locks had been changed. The memories inside were no longer his to protect. Across the street, under a trembling patch of tarp, a white woman knelt on the pavement. Her brown hair clung to her face, soaked and tangled. In her arms were three tiny bodies, triplets no more than 4, wrapped in a single threadbare blanket. They shivered violently, their lips purple with cold. The woman's voice cracked. Through the wind, "Please," she begged the officer standing between them and shelter. "My children can't stay out in the cold." Her name was Sarah Williams, but Marcus didn't know that yet. He didn't know the names of the children, either Lily, Noah, Emma. He didn't know how long they'd been homeless or how much shame Sarah had swallowed just to keep them alive one more day. All he knew was that in the middle of his own nightmare, someone else's pain was screaming just as loud. "Hey, that's my house," Marcus shouted, struggling against the grip of the guards. The bailiff, a short man with a clipboard and mustache that tried too hard, didn't even look up. "Not anymore, Mr. Evans. The bank has foreclosed. This property now belongs to Richmond Financial Group." Richmond. That name hit like a slap. Marcus felt his chest cave in. 3 months ago, his wife Elena had died in that house. Cancer. The kind that moves fast and shows no mercy. Since then, Marcus had barely left the front room, still untouched, still smelling of her shampoo. The house was more than shelter. It was memory. It was the last place Elena had smiled, and now they were throwing him out of it like trash. His eyes flicked back to the woman. The kids. Their misery was raw, unfiltered. No guards restrained them, no bailiff shouted at them, but their suffering was somehow louder than his own. The protective instinct came without warning. A surge, a decision. "Are you evicting her?" "Too?" he asked, nodding at Sarah. "She lived in the back apartment," the officer said. "The whole property's been foreclosed." Marcus looked at her. She looked back. 2 strangers. 1 storm. 1 enemy. "How much time do we have?" "An hour." That was all it took. "I have a place," Marcus said, turning to Sarah. "It's not much, a cabin on a lake. It's my brother-in-law's, but we can go there." Sarah blinked. "Why would you?" "It's better than staying in the rain with kids who can't stop shaking." They left together, no plan, no explanation. Just a cabin, a car with gas, and 2 broken souls holding on to something warmer than anger. Shared humanity. What neither of them could have known, not Marcus, not Sarah, not even the smug security guards, was that they were about to uncover something far bigger than a cruel eviction, something that had been quietly killing families for years, and buried deep in Sarah's folder of children's drawing paper was the evidence Elena Evans had died for. The truth, the kind that could bring down an empire. "Stay with us because this storm," it was only the beginning. The cabin was small, just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that smelled like cedar and forgotten summers. But to Marcus and Sarah, it felt like a fortress. Outside, the lake hissed beneath the wind, its gray surface chopped into waves. Inside, silence stretched awkwardly between them. The triplets had finally fallen asleep in a pile of damp blankets near the fireplace. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, holding a worn manila folder tightly to her chest, like it was both shield and secret. Marcus paced, restless. His eyes kept darting to the folder. "What's in there?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "Just papers from work. I clean offices at Richmond Financial. I grabbed the ones with blank backs for the kids to draw on." She opened it slowly, as if unsure whether it was okay, whether she was about to make something worse by revealing too much. But what she revealed would change everything. Marcus crouched beside her. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. By the third, he wasn't breathing. Each sheet was more chilling than the last. Internal memos, risk assessments, neighborhood maps shaded in red, and stamped across the top in bold, Operation Clean Sweep. He flipped through them faster now. Then he froze. There it was, a spreadsheet with mortgage foreclosure targets. One column read demographic risk score. Another read priority for removal. His finger traced the last column, his voice hoarse. Why are they only marking Black, Latino, and single-parent households? Sarah's lips parted in shock. I never noticed. I didn't even read them, just grabbed ones the kids could use. Marcus didn't respond. His mind had splintered into memory. Elena, hunched over the kitchen table, papers spread out like puzzle pieces. Her brow furrowed, her fingers tapping a rhythm on the glass. She'd been digging, asking questions, making phone calls that suddenly stopped, getting sick so quickly. His hands were trembling. She was looking into this, he murmured. Before she got sick, she said something wasn't right at the bank. She kept talking about predatory targeting, about someone hiding behind algorithms. Sarah leaned closer. Elena, your wife. Marcus nodded. She was a financial analyst, worked for a consulting firm. They dropped her when she got sick, said her medical costs were bad for their risk pool. A pause. Then he whispered, Richmond handles their insurance. Silence. The folder sat between them like a ticking bomb. Marcus stood and reached for his phone. I need to call someone. Jack, my brother-in-law, he knows a lawyer. Do you trust him? With my life. 2 hours later, Marcus handed the documents to Jack in the cabin's driveway. The man blinked, flipping through the first few pages in stunned silence. Jesus, Jack muttered. I know exactly who to call. Enter David Reeves. In the world of corporate litigation, Reeves was what nightmares looked like in a tailored suit. He'd taken down pharmaceutical giants, predatory tech firms, and even a meatpacking conglomerate that once poisoned half a town. Ruthless, relentless, but not heartless. When he saw the words, clean sweep, he didn't blink. He just said, send me everything. They met 2 days later, not in an office but in the cabin, surrounded by sleeping children and pine-scented drafts. Sarah sat on the couch, arms folded, eyes down. Marcus stood by the window, unable to sit still. David, unfazed, began to unpack the folder with clinical precision. Maps, timelines, email headers, risk matrices, he muttered. These aren't policy guidelines, they're blueprints for financial warfare. Warfare? Sarah asked softly. David looked at her, eyes narrowing. Do you know what you accidentally saved? She shook her head. You have in this folder verifiable evidence that Richmond Financial orchestrated targeted foreclosures based not on financial risk, but racial and familial demographics. That is, by legal definition, systemic discrimination. He held up a memo. This one, he continued, clearly identifies zip codes with undesirable density. Their words, not mine. They knew exactly what they were doing. Sarah's voice cracked. I didn't know, I just wanted paper for the kids to draw on. David looked at her for a long time. Then he said gently but firmly, and by doing that you might have just saved thousands of families. That night Marcus sat on the porch again, staring at the still lake. Sarah joined him, pulling her coat tighter. Do you think Elena was onto this? I don't know, Marcus replied. But she didn't trust Richmond. She was trying to build something. Then out of nowhere she got denied treatment 3 times. Sarah's voice was almost a whisper. I don't think your wife just died. Marcus didn't respond, but his silence wasn't empty. It was brimming with decision. What do we do now? She asked. He turned to her, eyes burning in the cold. We destroy them, all of them. Inside, David began categorizing the documents into what he called attack vectors. Memos, emails, legal memos, budget forecasts. Sarah wandered into the kitchen and stopped in her tracks. There, on the counter, was a photo of Elena. Smiling, confident, kind. Sarah stared at it for a long time. Marcus watched her from the doorway. You knew her, didn't you? Sarah didn't answer, but tears welled in her eyes. I used to see her in the office, she whispered. She'd bring her own coffee in a blue thermos. Always said good morning. No one else did. She treated me like I mattered. Marcus stepped closer. She would have liked you. Sarah wiped her eyes. She saved all this. I just carried it. Marcus shook his head. No. She lit the fuse. But you're the one holding the match. And outside, beneath the frozen wind, the Richmond Empire had no idea it was already starting to burn. Sarah didn't mean to find it. She was reorganizing the folder, trying to make sense of the chaos David Reeves had sorted into categories of outrage, when a thin black object slipped from the inner seam and clattered to the wooden floor. Flash drive, unmarked, except for one name etched faintly in gold script on the back. E. Evans. She froze. Marcus, hearing the sound, turned from the fireplace. His eyes narrowed as he walked over. What is that? I think it belonged to Elena. He took it from her gently, like it might be fragile, like it might still carry her fingerprints. They both stared at it, the air suddenly heavy, the fire crackling too loudly in the background. David looked up from the table. Is it encrypted? Marcus nodded slowly. She was paranoid about security. She used a password vault and two-factor authentication for grocery lists. I can break it, David said. But if she left it behind, she wanted it found. Marcus hesitated. Then let's find her. It took 4 hours and David's secure laptop to break through the encryption. What waited inside was not just documentation. It was a digital confession, a whisper from beyond. Elena Evans had recorded everything: emails, internal memos, spreadsheets detailing gentrification metrics, boardroom minutes, video clips, secretly filmed, where executives laughed over phrases like filtering out the human trash. One folder was titled simply Operation Clean Sweep, Execution Phase. But the most devastating file was an audio recording. Elena's voice came first, soft, breathy. You could hear the illness in her tone, but her words were steady, measured. If you're listening to this, I probably didn't survive, but I need you to understand. This wasn't an accident. They knew. They planned it, and they let me die. Marcus didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then came a second voice. Arrogant, male, Richard Sterling III, CEO, suit and smirk personified. The same man who had grinned through eviction notices, toasted the collapse of working-class neighborhoods, and promised shareholders a cleaner, more profitable cityscape. He wasn't grinning now. This was a recording of a private meeting. Elena had somehow captured it from a wireless mic in her pen, one David confirmed as legitimate. Sterling's voice rang clear. The Mexican analyst is digging too deep. If she uncovers our offshore funnel, she'll find everything. The zoning bribes, the shell firms, the adjusted approval contracts. Another voice, unidentified, replied, Want us to scare her off? Maybe leak something on her? Sterling, no. Let's do the medical route. We've got contacts. Deny the first 2 treatments. By round 3, it'll be too late. Cancer moves fast and will look clean. Silence, then muffled laughter. Marcus closed the laptop. His hands were trembling. He stood, walked to the corner of the room and leaned against the wall. He didn't cry, but he looked like a man trying not to drown in his own breath. Sarah placed a hand on his back. She knew, he whispered. She knew they were going to kill her, and she kept going anyway. David nodded, grim. She didn't just die. She was eliminated. That night, Marcus sat outside on the cabin porch, the snow beginning to crust over the earth. He stared at the frozen lake, the stars above like indifferent witnesses. Sarah joined him wrapped in a blanket. She gave everything, Marcus said. She knew they wouldn't let her live. And she didn't stop. You wouldn't have stopped either. I never got to say goodbye. I didn't even know what she was fighting. Sarah looked at him, eyes glassy. Now you do. He turned toward her, jaw clenched. We're going to finish it. Whatever plan she started, we'll finish it. Inside the cabin, the flash drive glowed faintly in David's laptop, illuminating his face in cold light. He had sorted its contents into folders, each more damning than the last. One contained video footage from inside Richmond's quarterly board meeting. Slides titled Community Renewal Strategy. The map on screen was redlined to hell. Another folder, offshore transfers. A third, corporate donations to judges, mayors, regulators. At the bottom of the directory was a single file. Operation Justice, How to Bring Down an Empire. David opened. It wasn't a manifesto. It was a plan. Elena had laid it out step by step. Gather irrefutable evidence. Connect the paper trail. Wait for a public moment, a major press conference or earnings report, and then leak everything at once. Total exposure, maximum humiliation. She hadn't lived to see it through. But now they could. 2 days later, David called in favors. A tech team was assembled. Whistleblowers, journalists, ethical hackers. They began preparing the drop. They weren't going to sue Richmond. They were going to burn it. Marcus spent those nights listening to Elena's recordings. Her voice filled the cabin like she'd never left. She had documented everything. Her growing suspicions, her failed treatments, the look on a doctor's face who had once tried to apologize but couldn't. Each file was a shard of her courage and her death. And each time Marcus heard her, he felt the sharp edge of purpose replace the dull weight of grief. She had built a weapon. They would pull the trigger. In one particularly haunting recording, Elena had left a message, clearly, intended for Marcus. You always said the world was too big to change. I used to believe that too. But what if we're not supposed to change the world, just the part we touch? I love you, Marcus. And if you're hearing this, don't let them win. Not with silence, not with fear. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling until dawn, the voice of his wife echoing in his ears. By sunrise, he had made his decision. They wouldn't just fight back. They would finish what she died trying to start. It was a morning made for triumph. Flashbulbs popped as executives in tailored suits adjusted their ties. Rows of journalists filed into the sleek, glass-paneled auditorium of Richmond Financial Group's corporate headquarters. The company's banners lined the walls. Clean, modern, sterile. The slogan revitalizing America's future glowed behind the podium. The air smelled like money and arrogance. Richard Sterling III, CEO and poster child for predatory capitalism, stood behind the curtain adjusting his cufflinks. His silk tie, deep navy with gold accents, had been chosen specifically to convey confidence and control. On stage, his assistant cued the slideshow, charts, neighborhood heat maps, investment growth projections. Today's press conference was meant to mark the company's greatest milestone yet. Operation Clean Sweep was complete. Sterling stepped onto the stage to polite applause, his grin as smooth as his suit. Cameras focused in, microphones extended. He began. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a historic day for Richmond Financial. Our strategy of revitalization has not only stabilized volatile regions, it has created safe, valuable, thriving neighborhoods. He didn't mention the foreclosures. He didn't mention the evictions. He certainly didn't mention Elena Evans. He went on. We now move into phase 2. 5 new cities, 5 new opportunities for growth. But then, at exactly 10:03 a.m., the screens behind him flickered once, twice, then went black. Murmurs rose in the crowd. Sterling turned, visibly annoyed. We seem to be experiencing technical... The screen lit up. It was not a corporate logo. It was a woman's face. Elena Evans, alive only in pixels, but alive nonetheless. Her image was serene, eyes soft but unflinching. She was seated in a chair. The Richmond logo faintly visible in the background. A collective hush fell over the room, and then her voice came through the speakers, calm and crystalline. If you're watching this, it's because I didn't survive to tell the story. But the truth, the whole truth, always finds a way. Sterling froze. He turned to the control booth, mouthing "shut it down." But nothing happened. The presentation had been hijacked, and no one could stop it. The screen now displayed documents, internal emails, spreadsheets, demographic heat maps, a voiceover, Elena's, explained each item with chilling clarity. This is Operation Clean Sweep, an initiative designed not for urban renewal, but for selective elimination. Richmond Financial developed an algorithm to flag properties based not on risk, but on race, income level, and family structure. The crowd stirred. Journalists leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Neighborhoods with high concentrations of minorities and single-parent households were labeled as liabilities. Richmond's solution? Force foreclosure, push them out, rebrand the neighborhood, profit. Sterling's face drained of color. He moved toward the podium, gripping it like a lifeline. This is a fabrication, a deep fake. But then came the final blow. Audio, clear. Undeniable. Sterling's voice, captured in a secret meeting, played over the speakers. No, let's do the medical route. We've got contacts. Deny the first 2 treatments. Cancer moves fast. By round 3, she'll be too weak to fight. A gasp rippled through the room. He continued. We keep our hands clean. No headlines, no lawsuits, just another casualty. Sterling staggered backward. A second screen lit up behind him, now showing Elena's medical rejections. Date stamped. 3 of them, each marked denied due to cost-risk ratio. Sterling tried to leave the stage, but the doors were locked, quietly, discreetly, just as David Reeves had arranged. Then, at 10:15, the side doors burst open. FBI agents entered, weapons holstered but ready. Richard Sterling III, the lead agent, announced, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, financial discrimination, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder." The cameras didn't stop flashing. Sterling turned wild-eyed. "You don't understand. It was just business, just maximizing profits." A voice rang out from the back of the room. "No, Sterling. It was a life." The crowd parted. Marcus Evans walked forward. He wore no suit, no badge, just a quiet resolve etched into every step. His voice didn't tremble. She was 42. Her name was Elena. She loved Bach, gardenias, and volunteering on weekends to teach math to kids who had nothing. She was my wife. He stopped in front of Sterling, looked him dead in the eye. "And you killed her." Sterling opened his mouth, but no words came. Behind Marcus, another figure appeared, Sarah Williams, not the tired, soaking wet woman Sterling's policies had cast aside. Today she wore a fitted black coat, her hair pulled back, her eyes bright and steady. She walked to the microphone with quiet confidence. "My name is Sarah Williams. I cleaned your floors, your offices. I was invisible to you. You never imagined that someone like me could be holding the very evidence that would bring you down." She turned to the cameras. But here we are. The FBI agents cuffed Sterling. As he was led away, his eyes darted to the screen where Elena's face still shone, serene, unflinching. David Reeves took the podium. "What you've witnessed today," he said, "isn't just corporate misconduct. It's financial genocide. It's targeted destruction masked as urban development. But this is only the beginning." He held up a flash drive. "We have evidence linking Richmond Financial to political donors, judges, and development firms in over 7 states. What began as a local crime is a national betrayal." Sarah stepped up beside him. Her voice cracked, but didn't break. "This isn't just about justice for Elena. It's justice for every family who got a foreclosure notice instead of a fair chance. For every child who went to sleep in a car. For every community labeled as disposable." Camera flashes continued. The live stream surged past 1 million viewers. Outside the building, a crowd had formed. Word of the press conference had spread like wildfire. Protesters, victims, and supporters gathered as the arrest footage played on giant LED screens. Some cried. Others cheered. Candles were lit. Names were read aloud. In the middle of it all, a mural had been spray-painted onto a nearby wall, Elena's face surrounded by blossoms. Below her, 3 words, "The truth lives on." Back inside, Marcus stood quietly. The man who had been evicted, who had buried his wife, who had once been swallowed by grief, now stood at the epicenter of something much larger. He turned to "Sarah, your kids, where are they?" She smiled faintly. "Watching this," At the cabin, he nodded. Good. Let them see this. Let them remember that sometimes the smallest people in the room carry the biggest truth. She looked up at the screen and whispered, "She saved us all, even after she was gone." Marcus nodded. Now let's save others. 6 months after the world watched a corporate giant crumble live on camera, the former Richmond financial headquarters reopened its doors, but not as a bank. Gone were the polished floors where executives once plotted evictions. Gone were the marble counters, the private elevators, the tinted glass offices that loomed like watchtowers over suffering. In their place, bright murals painted by local kids, bulletin boards advertising free legal aid, classrooms for financial literacy, counseling rooms for eviction survivors, and in the lobby where stock tickers once ran across LED strips, a new message scrolled in soft gold letters. Welcome to the Elena Evans Community Center. It was poetic. Even Sterling would have had to admit that. The heart of an empire built on erasure was now beating for the very people it tried to wipe away. Marcus Evans walked the hallways with a quiet sense of gravity. He had accepted the role of director only after weeks of soul-searching. He didn't want revenge. He wanted structure, purpose, a way to finish what Elena started, not by taking down more corporations, but by lifting up the lives they tried to flatten. Sarah Williams stood beside him most mornings, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning every detail. She had been named Social Programs Coordinator, a title she wore with earned pride. "A year ago, I was mopping these floors at midnight," she said once, smiling as she looked around the newly painted community kitchen. Now she was designing meal plans, coordinating art therapy for displaced children, hosting workshops on renters' rights. Her triplets, Lily, Noah, and Emma, had become local mascots, always running down the halls, laughter bouncing off the same walls where bankers once discussed algorithms to measure human worth. They had drawn the mural in the reading room, a rainbow with 3 stick figures standing under it, holding hands with a woman named Miss Elena. But justice, real justice, doesn't end with a courtroom. It begins there. And so, on a gray afternoon, a white van pulled up to the center. The side read, "Federal Correctional Transport Out," stepped Richard Sterling III. His designer suits had been replaced with an orange jumpsuit. His shoes were state-issued. His once slick hair now showed streaks of gray. He wore no jewelry, no watch, just handcuffs, and a face hollowed by public disgrace. The court had ruled he served 2 afternoons a week in community service, not in some isolated facility, but here, among the people his company had targeted. Poetic again. Marcus met him. At the door. "You'll be working in the kitchen," he said calmly. "Maria will train you." Sterling didn't speak, just nodded stiffly. Donna Maria was a 68-year-old Latina woman with soft eyes and the backbone of a soldier. She had lost her home to Richmond's schemes 2 years ago. Now she ran the kitchen like a general. Firm, fair, no shortcuts. She handed Sterling an apron. "You serve with respect," she told him. "Look people in the eye, smile, ask if they want more." He opened his mouth, perhaps to object, then closed it again, and obeyed. At first the community was cold. Some muttered as he handed them plates. Others stared. One elderly black woman took her food, paused, and said quietly, "You took my house. My grandchildren slept in a shelter for 3 months." Sterling swallowed. "I'm sorry." She looked at him hard. "Sorry doesn't fix the past, but service can shape the future." And walked away. Over time, something shifted. Sterling stopped flinching. He started remembering names. He asked about allergies. He scrubbed pots without complaint. One day, Donna Maria handed him a towel and said, "You move faster now. You learn." He almost smiled. Former Richmond employees, the ones who had turned whistleblower or testified in court, were invited back to teach business ethics seminars. Some of them walked the halls side by side with victims they once helped displace. The center didn't erase history. It rewrote it, person by person. Sterling attended a session. He listened, took notes. One day, he found himself alone in the Dish room with Marcus. Steam fogged the windows. His hands were red from hot water, raw from scrubbing. Marcus leaned against the door. "You know," he said, "Elena used to say that justice isn't punishment. It's transformation. She believed people could change." Sterling stared at the sink. "I destroyed so many lives," he murmured. Marcus didn't deny it. He just said, "Then spend the rest of yours building something better. Prove her right." Sterling nodded, not with pride, with humility. Outside, kids were planting flowers in a community garden. Inside, Sarah read stories to children in the new Elena Evans reading room. David Reeves gave weekly seminars on legal empowerment, teaching families how to fight exploitative contracts. Job fairs were held on Fridays. Financial aid clinics on Saturdays. The building pulsed with purpose. Elena's photo hung in the front hall, framed in warm oak. A plaque beneath read, "She lost her life fighting injustice, but her voice gave life to a movement." One afternoon, Sterling was seen laughing, not cruelly but openly, while showing a little girl how to scoop soup without spilling. Her name was Ava. Her mother had once worked in janitorial services at Richmond. Now she was the center's facilities manager. Redemption moves in small steps, but it moves. On the one-year anniversary of the Richmond Files expose, national media returned to the community center. Documentaries aired. New laws had been passed, stricter regulations on algorithmic foreclosures, anti-discrimination auditing, executive accountability clauses. Elena's flash drive had done more than expose corruption. It had started a wave and hadn't crested yet. Later that evening, Marcus and Sarah stood in the garden, now blooming with spring daffodils. A memorial stone rested under the largest tree, etched with Elena's name. Fresh flowers were left there daily, not by Marcus, but by strangers. "She saved us all," Sarah said, her voice soft. Marcus took her hand. "Even after she was on," Sarah smiled. "And she taught us the most powerful revenge," Marcus finished her sentence, "is building something so beautiful, their evil becomes irrelevant." They stood in silence, not mourning, but honoring. In the months that followed the fall of Richmond Financial, something extraordinary happened. Not a scandal, not a protest, a movement. Elena Evans's flash drive, the one hidden in the back of a manila folder, nearly discarded as scrap paper, became the spark for a federal investigation into systemic financial discrimination. What began as a local battle in a rain-soaked eviction scene rippled into national headlines, congressional hearings, and reform bills introduced under Elena's name. They called it the Evans Doctrine, a new legal framework demanding transparency in corporate foreclosure algorithms and mandating oversight on institutions that profit from displacement. But the real change didn't happen in Washington. It happened on the ground. Marcus Evans, once a grieving accountant standing helpless on his own front steps, now stood before the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Financial Accountability. By his side, Sarah Williams, no longer a cleaning lady, but a woman recognized nationwide for preserving the documents that exposed a multi-billion-dollar lie. Together, they had been appointed co-leaders of a new federal task force, the Commission for Economic Justice and Housing Integrity. The irony didn't escape either of them. The man who lost everything, and the woman who had nothing, now shaping policies to protect millions. "We're not here to punish," Marcus told the press. "We're here to rebuild a foundation that was rigged from the start, and to make sure no one else is left outside in the rain." Back at the Elena Evans Community Center, life pulsed with quiet beauty. Families came for help, for food, for hope. Children played in the library where foreclosure plans were once drawn. Former Richmond executives, now whistleblowers and ethics instructors, gave lectures on accountability. And Richard Sterling III? He still reported every Wednesday and Saturday. His orange jumpsuit had been replaced by a plain gray apron. His hands were no longer soft. His hair was nearly white. But something had shifted in his eyes. He no longer avoided Marcus. One afternoon, after serving lunch to over 200 families, Sterling found him outside in the garden. "I know there's nothing I can say to fix what I did," he said quietly. "But thank you for giving me a chance to see what real justice looks like." Marcus didn't smile, but he didn't turn away either. "Elena believed people could change," he said. "Now prove her right." Sterling nodded, then returned to the kitchen. The memorial stood beneath the oldest tree in the garden. A stone bench curved around. It engraved with Elena's favorite quote, "Truth is like water, it always finds a way." Fresh flowers were always there, daisies, gardenias, sometimes wildflowers left anonymously, sometimes little drawings signed by a child named Lily or Emma. On the 1-year anniversary of the exposé, families gathered around that tree, not to mourn, but to celebrate. Survivors of Operation Clean Sweep shared their stories. Laughter replaced silence, music rose from the courtyard, and candles flickered long into the night. That evening, Sarah and Marcus stood at the edge of the lake where it had all begun. The triplets danced behind them, chasing fireflies. "We didn't just survive," Sarah said, watching the ripples. Marcus nodded, eyes soft. "We turned the storm into something beautiful." And above them, the stars blinked like Elena's final message, still echoing in the lives she saved. But just as the story seemed to end, something new stirred beneath the surface. In a quiet federal office, agents reviewed encrypted files recovered. During the Richmond seizure, files that hinted at something far larger, bigger than Richmond, older, deeper. A new case was forming, a new empire was about to face the truth. So stay tuned, because if Richmond taught us anything, it's that silence is never permanent, and the next chapter is already unfolding.